Hi, welcome to this episode of Heaven Encounters. My guest today is Jonathan Hunter. He lived, by his own testimony, a hedonistic lifestyle, and he was involved in every facet of that hedonism. Again, his word, but he was transformed after he died and experienced God. So, Jonathan, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, Jonathan, let's start. You were kind of the proverbial bad boy in a way, weren't you? You just was there anything that you didn't do, or
I wasn't a gangbanger.
Okay.
Probably a few other seedy aspects of life that thankfully I wasn't a part of, but I have my fair share of it.
Well, tell us what led to that lifestyle, and what precipitated that, and all of that goes into that without getting into some of the seedier aspects of it. But why did you experience with drugs and sex and all of these other things that were in the world?
Well, like so many people, would have a similar response to mine, having participated in all that. It always goes back to the family. My father was an alcoholic. My parents were unhappily married for most of my life. I didn't bond well with my father, so there was always questions about my manhood. He was really unable to. He was so emotionally absent. So by the time it came to my senior year and high school and an opportunity to get away from Philadelphia, very conservative at that time, the Philadelphia suburbs, I thought I'd go to school in Florida. My mother died in my senior year, so I really didn't have any ties there. My brother was in the Marines, so he was away, and I was out to chart my own life. I was really confused, though, about my identity. I would say in my sexual attractions, I had dated women, even, unfortunately, slept with women by that time, but I still had this curiosity, and it became, in puberty, a sexual longing for men. So it's sort of an emotional deficit that became sexualized in puberty, and there was this attraction to other men. I didn't participate in that until, as I said, I went to school away from Philadelphia, Florida. And in my second year, in the summer of my second year there, I experimented sexually with a friend back in the Philadelphia area where I was visiting. Then I decided that I wanted to get out of Florida, and I had done a play in the university, in that Florida university, and that sort of propelled me to New York City to go to an acting class there. And New York City, as you can imagine, in the theatrical realm, is very, very bohemian and very, very lax. And so you can kind of experiment with anything you want to. And so I did. The one off-Broadway play that I did went to tour in Paris and in London. And then I decided, upon finishing helping them out in the casting department for this play, I decided that I would stay in France, and that's when I got into a full-on same-sex relationship. And I started doing drugs. It started back in New York. We're talking about the 1970s, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And I was doing a lot of it. I was doing mescaline, LSD, ups, downs, speed, whatever it was. And it escalated in France. I ended up doing a couple of films there. One I starred in, of no consequence now, and some bit parts. And after 2 years, I thought, I'm done with France, and I want to do stuff in my own language. So I thought it's time to move to Hollywood. And I did. Left Paris and moved to LA. And when I got to LA, saw a friend that I had known from New York, from that show I'd done, who had moved there. And he introduced me to all the gay bars that were popular at the time. And so I began to really identify with being gay. And it was in December of 1979. I was at a friend's house. This friend usually had they were minor dealers, you could say, just to really be friends, of drugs, usually cocaine. And I knew where they kept it. And I had asked if I could do some laundry at their house. They were at work. And so I went in their desk drawer, pulled it out, and there was a little gram of what I thought was cocaine. And I thought, well, I'm going to wait on tables at a local restaurant, which is what a lot of out-of-work actors do. They wait on tables. And I thought I'll get a little buzz on here with this cocaine. So I went in their spare bedroom and laid it out and rolled up this little dollar bill to snort it. And I snorted what ended up being a half a gram from this little packet. But it turned out it was pure PCP, which really can mess you up considerably. Just a few little hits of it in your nostrils. And I had done a half a gram. That really came on quickly. I thought, oh my gosh, what have I snorted here? I thought that this was cocaine, and the whole room started swirling. I laid down on the bed there in the spare bedroom, and that's the last I remember of that part. As it happens, the guy who owned the place, I came home. It was just before 5 when I had done this, and he came home at 5 and immediately saw the packet sitting by the bed and figured it out, called the paramedics, and they came. And it turns out, according to the medical report, they had to defibrillate my heart because it had frozen.
Well, you had, at that point, you had essentially, the clinical definition for death is the heart stopping. And at that point, the drugs, the PCP, which was exponentially higher than would have been, well, safe, I guess, or not cause death.
Yep.
And your heart had stopped during that time.
That's right.
And you had this encounter then, obviously, in your faith then as a non-believer. So
that's correct. I'd only gone to church a couple of handfuls of time my whole life. So I was not a born again believer at all. And after moving out to LA, had gotten into all sorts of spiritual disciplines that were not Christian.
Yes. Well, you had now what we call either a near-death or afterlife experience as a non-believer. And tell us about that. What happened?
Well, yeah, the next thing I know, this clearly must have been the time when my heart had frozen. I'm coming out of this blackness, and those who have had this experience would recall some of the same things that I went through. But I came out of this blackness, and there was this light that I was starting to merge with, and I thought, oh, my body's different. Oh, it was all there, but it was almost opaque. That's all the only way I could describe it. But I knew that I died. And I remember thinking, oh, I've died. But what I'm beginning to merge with was alive. It was like life itself. As I got closer and more enveloped in this light, I just knew that in the midst of it, it was Jesus. That's all I knew. But I was thinking to myself, this is wonderful. I'm sorry for the people that I've left behind in my death, but I'm in the presence of timelessness. Of course, it's hard to describe what that's like unless you've been through it, but there was no sense of time. Time was alive. Everything was just now. I was in the presence of living infinite knowledge, and I felt unconditionally loved. It's something I'd never experienced before. And as I became enveloped in this white light, the Lord spoke to me. I don't know how much time had passed or what, but I didn't even have to verbalize it. He was speaking to me in my innermost being. And he said, Jonathan, I want to show you something. And so I said, okay. And he immediately let loose with this power of sorts. And I was shown my entire life. Now, I can only remember vaguely how to describe that. Was sort of like a holistic experience where everything that I did and thought was being exposed. And at the end of it, I can even see some of the images and the people that I was thinking about, thinking dark thoughts and damaging thoughts, and I hated that person, blah, blah, but I wasn't saying it out loud. All those things were all coming at me. And when it was done, the Lord said, Jonathan, what did you see? And I said, it was all negative. It was all destructive. That's all I see about my life. And he said, is that it? And I said, that's all I see. It was all negative. That's as much as I had in that realm. I did not go into paradise. My theory, I wasn't a Christian at all. There was a lot of my lifestyle that needed to change, I think, to really enter paradise. So I did not see my mother, should she have accepted the Lord, and if she was there with him. I didn't see anybody who had died before me, a couple of friends in my high school that I knew. But I began falling away from his presence. And the next thing I knew that I was conscious of, I'm waking up in a hospital ward. My arms are tethered down. Apparently, I had tried to escape, and they caught me and then sort of strapped me down. And my brother, a new Christian, a married, strong Christian woman, was there. And I thought, I got to pull this together. Where am I? Where am I? I was just with Jesus. And now I'm here and I have these two people staring at me as if they're going to get answers from me. I don't even know who I am here. And so I find out later that my brother and sister-in-law, had been praying. This was 1979. They had contacted the Oral Roberts Prayer Tower for intercessory prayer for me. My sister-in-law is a new member of my family, so I didn't know her well at all. I did know she was a Christian, and so she was really the rock in that hospital for me. I had a friend named Bob who came by. I recognized him, but it's interesting. At that time, there was a movie out with George Burns called, I think, just God. And it was with John Denver, and George Burns with a cigar was sort of this very personable Jewish God who did these humorous quips with John Denver. And so I thought, oh, okay, why is Bob here? Oh, wait a minute. So maybe my brother, Terry, is Joseph, and he married Andrea, this dear woman who's here praying for me. And Bob must be Father God. And so I said, are you God, Bob? And I remember asking that question. And he looked over at my sister-in-law, who was not a Christian, Bob, and said, shall I say yes? In case he freaks out, because he thinks I am. And she said, you will not tell him you are God. You will not. You aren't, and you won't. And so he said, no, I'm not God. And I thought, uh-oh. Because at that point, I thought, I must be Jesus. This is the drugs. I must be Jesus. So I'm not Jesus. Why are they looking at me? Where am I? And I'm hearing these doors shut, like a slamming of doors as soon as Bob said that. And it's getting darker and darker and darker and darker. And then I felt like I was in this gurney, strapped down in utter blackness. It's like my sight had gone to blackness. I couldn't see anybody. I felt like I was jettisoned out into outer space, into utter blackness, but strapped down to this gurney. And I remember crying and saying, oh, God, help me, please. Oh, God, help me, please, 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 please. And that's it, of the conscious moments that I remember from the hospital, except for one time when I was sitting up in the bed and I started saying, I am Jesus Christ. It was clear there was another voice inside of me. So having opened myself up with these radical drugs, unknowingly, albeit, it was like a house party. So anything spiritual, demonic could come right in because of what the door that I had left open. And so I felt this voice saying, I am Jesus Christ within me. And my brother's trying to push me back down. This ex-Marine said, I've never seen such supernatural strength. At the same time, I saw these entities, these spirits floating in the air, and they were telling me what to say. So I was repeating all the sexual experiences I had had, apparently.
And you were telling them of all of these experiences.
Well, they were repeating it. You did this, didn't you? You did this kind of sexual act. I said, I did that kind of sexual act. Yeah.
And you were voicing this to those around you.
Yeah. So Bob, whoever else was there at this point, my brother, my sister-in-law were hearing this. I was not really aware of them, but I remember that one incident. And she said, my sister-in-law, Andrea, said, you were sharing some pretty nasty stuff. So it was really a house party going on inside of me. Next thing I remember, I don't know how much time passed, but I woke up in their little bungalow where my brother and his wife, Terry and Andrea, their names, were living. And I was in their bedroom. And I was clutching this Afghan that had been knit, I think, by her mother, knit together. And I remember that very distinctly, this Afghan, whatever it's called, this quilt, being there in this bed. And I opened my eyes, and my sister-in-law comes in, and she's there to give me some porridge. And I thought, I've landed. What world am I on?
You landed.
I landed. During the drug part of it, everything kept on moving. Nothing ever remained the same. Like I'm experiencing these voices inside of me, and then I'd pass out. And then I'd have dreams, these weird dreams. And so at this point, I thought, I've landed on Earth. It was like it was Earth. I'm back. But what year is it? What planet am I on Earth? But there is Andrea, and I'm on Thorazine, so my tongue is kind of swallowed. Excuse me, my tongue is engorged from the Thorazine to calm me down. And I said to her, "Where am I?" She said, "You had a drug overdose." And I said, "A drug overdose? What?" And she said, "Yeah. PCP." And so I didn't know that I had done PCP. I didn't know that I had overdosed. And I just wept. I just cried because I realized what I had put her through. I hadn't seen my brother yet. And she just really took charge. Actually, in the hospital, after 3 days, they said, he's got to go in the mental ward. And she was the one that said, we're taking him home. No matter how messed up he still is from the drugs, we're family, and we have the right to take him home. God bless her for doing that. She took a chance. She was a trained counselor. She knew her rights, but she didn't know if I was going to recover rightly. But they were there. My brother, Terry and Andrea, were there to really nurse me unto health. Eventually, the drugs wore off. It took quite a long time. And I then started sharing about this time with Jesus. And I remember Andrea going, what is this? And I said, it was wonderful. I met the Lord, Jesus. And she said, are you sure? And I said, oh, I know. It wasn't the drugs. This was Jesus. So as I was sharing this, out of the blue, she said, you know, there's a book called Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody. And it's about people with experiences like yours. You should go check it out. So 2 weeks after recovery, I go down to Logos bookstore in Westwood here in Los Angeles, a popular Christian bookstore. And sure enough, there was the book. And I just started reading and going, that's me. I didn't have a paradise experience, but that's me. I know what I felt, the unconditional love and all that, and the knowledge. And so I know that heaven is real. Heaven's real. I didn't even have any idea about what heaven was. So I realized I've been given a second chance. And so I said to Terry and Andrea, so I got to find this Jesus here, feel it, experience it like I did in heaven. And so they took me to a couple of churches, Church on the Way. Pastor Jack Hayford was there. And then they took me to the Vineyard Church, which was very popular also in Los Angeles at the time. It was in a high school auditorium. The pastor, Ken Gullickson, was in a Hawaiian shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. And I thought, whoa, this isn't the Episcopal Church back in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. What's this? And then they started worshiping, young people, hands raised, people my age. I thought, wow, I have goosebumps now, remembering. I thought, I'm feeling the presence of heaven here. And of course, that was the presence of the Holy Spirit. The body at work, worshiping the Lord. And as it turns out, that really impressed me to the point that approximately 3 months later, when I was at a friend's house, he was out shopping, and I was looking at the TV and channel surfing, and I came across TBN Network, and they were showing a repeat of a Washington for Jesus march. And so having seen this, and they said at the end of it, do you want to be caught up with Jesus and the church when he comes for his church? I thought, no way do I want to be left behind. No way. I want to be with them. I want to be with that Jesus. I know what it's like. And so that's when I accepted the Lord, and I gave myself to him. And over the succeeding years, I came to realize that the same-sex attraction and all those experiences that and feelings that I had needed to be put under the cross, if you will, because Jesus knows who I am. That's for sure. He showed me in heaven. And so I started on that journey of restoration unto my true personhood through a ministry called Desert Stream and the Living Waters program. And eventually, through that and through what I knew about life in heaven, I started an outreach to people with AIDS, and then people that morphed into a greater ministry for people with life-altering conditions. And early into that ministry, I found out that I had HIV infection from all the mistakes in the past, but the Lord got me through it. A couple of bouts of cancer and several other things. And so my testimony was really in conjunction with the testimony of the people that we were praying for and still do to this day.
Well, your life testifies of that, Jonathan. And you have now, you've ministered, you have a ministry now, you're helping others find some, not only recovery, but victory through their own struggles.
More life. More life.
Life. And that's your book.
That's one of them.
That's the name of the book. I've read your book. It's a great book. Yes. And you have other books as well.
Yes.
And people can access those.
Yes. More life, more glory, dealing with shame and self-hatred, hearing the voice of God. So if you, any of our viewers, listeners, go to embracinglife.us. There you can go to the resource page for our various books. You can contact us through that website, embracinglife.us, to book us. We do lots of Zoom seminars each month, and we do in-person, of course, seminars, and we tailor it to your needs. So that's the place to go.
And you have been ministering now for about 40 years, I think, or?
Almost since 1985, full-time.
Yes. And you are like a Paul figure in the sense that Paul lived a single life. And that was something that we've talked about before, if there's a gift of celibacy.
Yes.
And you're living out that gift, aren't you?
And I did. I thought I could maybe be a celibate after I became a Christian, committed. I dated a couple of women, but they even pointed out, they said, you're on a path and something greater. I'm not the one for you. There may be another woman for a wife, but I realized, oh, this may be something I could do. And in 1997, at a conference, I actually received that gift. I woke up the next morning. I wasn't praying for it, but the Lord had really touched me at the conference. And I woke up the next morning. I thought, oh my gosh, there is the gift of celibacy. Jesus talked about it. And that changed my life. And in some ways it's Pauline, because Paul had I think a near-death experience of some sort. And he remained a celibate, and I too can remain that way very easily. Nothing's changed, because that experience of seeing Jesus in heaven foreshortened the whole life journey to me. We're only a nanosecond away from being with him in person, fully. So I was able to leave marriage and a family aside in pursuit of Jesus and of sharing this wonderful, abundant life that he has for all of us.
And I've heard some wonderful stories about your impact worldwide as you've traveled in ministry. So we applaud you, Jonathan, for your service to the Lord. He saved you so that you could save others. So thank you for joining us. And the great news is, if you are in Christ Jesus, be of good cheer, because heaven is in your future. Until next time, take care and God bless. Thank you for watching this episode of Heaven Encounters. If you'd like more information, you can go to Randy Kay Ministries at randykay.org. Take care and God bless.